So I just thought I'd tell you about some of those things to watch for them. As the cities arise, don't get yourself a booth in the nearest New Age fair and set up shop, because everybody is psychic at that certain level. You know, you're clairvoyant, I know what people are thinking before they even speak, and it's, you know, it doesn't mean that you're the wonder of the Western world. So, what's the right attitude about such things? Respect. Respect the phenomena. It's been well written about, and then there's some very funny and heartwarming stories. And astral projection, near-death experiences, all these things are coming. To have somebody you can speak to then gives you some kind of a feedback. And especially if you know they're anchored in some kind of a basic spiritual teaching, which we try to stay to the strict and narrow spiritual truth, that somebody in the group can call somebody in the group and say, what do you think about such and such, and you get feedback, you know what I mean? So that you have access. So the collective experience of everybody here now is a spiritual library. We are the spiritual library of the knowingness that comes only through subjective experience, not through external authority. I never quote external authority for anything I say or do. You can quote somebody somewhere in time and history as a point of reference, but that is not the basis from which you're speaking. The speakingness comes from the authenticity of the presence of self within. Huh? We'll do some questions and all. After the break today, we'll do questions. We'll share all the questions and answers with the audience. We'll sign books or do whatever people would like us to do. Has anybody got any question right now? I'll take it right now about the phenomena that you might experience on the spiritual pathway. The physicality, the aches and pains, the increased sexuality. I'm trying to think what else could come up. The increased energies. Now, the increased energies, as the presence becomes more dominant, you become the field instead of the content of the field. There's a critical point at which you become the field altogether, and the personal self disappears, which mystifies the world, yes. And it's difficult to find one's balance back into the world. As I say, it took many years. And to even be back in the world, it's like the ox herding pictures, you know. The ox herding picture, the nearest one to the end, you're taken out of the world. And then that's extremely rare. Even rarer still is to come out of the world and be able to re-enter. So the difficulty with getting into intense spiritual energies is balancing yourself, as we'll see later, between left brain and right brain, between the presence, which is silent and is constantly pulling you to come back in itself, and the energy that it requires to recommit, to rebalance, to function again within the world. Why would one do that in the first place? First of all, you don't have to. From 600 and up, you're welcome to leave at any time. There's a standing invitation. Right this instant, you could leave. I could leave right this instant, and it would be great. You have permission to leave. The permission then means the stayingness is only occurring as a result of one's own spiritual will. For some greater good than one's own personal survival, because personal survival at that point is not interesting. Whether the physicality persists or not is irrelevant, because the physicality is frankly clumsy and always in the way. Everything you want to do, if I want to move from here to there, you can see I have to stop and move the whole body, which is whereas in the true state, the thought of being there is the same as being there, understand? So the body is a clumsiness, which is forever in the way. And having adopted it as a pet is the best technique to use at that point, and give it a name like Snuffy or something, something cuddly and warm and nice, and that you can love it, see? Besides, other people see that as you, and if you don't have one of these, they would be greatly mystified. There's a voice speaking to me out of the bush. Okay, all right. See, your spiritual intention is already changing the world, You'll say, what can I do to change the world? Best thing to do to change the world is leave it alone. Do it a favor. Do it a favor and don't improve it. Because everything that goes this way then comes back this way, see? So what can you do? You can increase the density of the seawater so that all the ships float higher in the ocean. Therefore, your commitment to spirituality reinforces the energy, the energy field of the collective. And everyone benefits. Everyone benefits. Every forgiveness that you do, every kind thought, every kind act, because the universe counts every hair on your head. Every hair on one's head is literally counted. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the kinesiologic method. Every kindness, then, every kindness. So a person says, well, I don't think I'm doing enough for the world. Well, first of all, you're staying out of it. That's doing a lot to begin with. My contribution to the world is to remain detached. Thank you, O Lord. All right. So, let's get on to more exciting things. We have exciting things to talk about today. I knew you were just really dying to know about the brain today, so it's funny, you know, when I do a transparency, almost, you know, 9 out of 10 times, within a week, Time magazine will have a big spread on the very transparency that I was doing. And that's funny. You know, I did one, the distribution of the energy fields in the planet, you know, in North Africa and all that. That very week, Time magazine had one, and North Africa was marked as the trouble spot of the world, 40 plus northern latitude, 40 to 80 or something like that. So, and this happened again. We were doing the brain. I don't know whether Time is a copycat or what. Anyway, no, we're all because there's an energy field bringing it into awareness. So this week it just happened to have one on the brain, and I just want you to know that the next slide is not made up. It's actually based on fact. This had to do with the use of drugs psychiatrically with children, and you know, it was one of those iffy, semi-accurate kind of things. Anyway, here we have the limbic system, which is where the impulses coming in get distributed to the whole nervous system. I just want you to know that I didn't make up these words. Here we have something called the amygdala. Where is the amygdala? Which is the emotional center. Here we have something called the thalamus, which is a relay center. And here we have the prefrontal cortex. And I just want you to know that I didn't make these words up. Now we're ready to go to the next slide. It's funny how time has come out over and over again with practically a variation of the very chart I'm working on. Yeah. Now, this is what you call keeping it simple, huh? This is keeping it simple. It's what we talked about this morning. We found that calibration level less than 200 has, oh, I need my pointer. Calibration level 200, below 200, has a different physiology than above 200. We found that below 200, you don't even have an etheric brain yet. 200 and over energizes the production and creation of an etheric brain. Now, as we said this morning, below 200 in the animal brain, the sensory input is very fast to the relay station, and then goes very fast. So this is emotions, fear and hatred, the Selye's stress response, Cannon's fight or flight. The emotional center in the brain. So the left brain, below 200, animal cortex, animal brain, then. The input goes unmodified, fast as all get out, to the emotional center. straight to the amygdala. At the same time, the same stimuli goes from the thalamus to the cortex and then down to the amygdala. But this is fast. And by the time the one goes through your cerebral cortex and you have a chance to think about it, it's already happened in the emotions. Therefore, it's necessary to forgive 85% of the people on the planet because they react emotionally and then their common sense comes around later. That's how politicians get to be politicians. Thinkingness happens much later. By the time they've twisted it and convinced you that their view of it is true, you're a goner. So they're counting on the fact that they can beat your feelings about things before your brain has a chance to realize that it's BS. That's spiritual talk, BS. The other thing about devotional non-duality is that the devotion is to the truth and not to piety. Therefore, a true teacher is sometimes outrageous, more in the style of Zen than in the style of a pious saint. People think, well, advanced consciousness, you can see somebody in rows with hands folded and a little cap, praying as he goes with his rosary beads, you know what I mean? Unlikely. That's somebody play acting at piety, see? Because that which is pious loves and respects life and is committed to the truth and is very often abrupt and uses ridicule and ridiculousness and can be very funny sometimes. What comes to the mind, what comes out of the mind is sometimes very funny. It just cracks me up driving along and all of a sudden I'll say that's hilarious. Okay, so here you got a fast track, you see the deer, the mind says, get me the gun. Then it thinks, but I'm spiritual, I should be loving the deer, but you've already, or you curse somebody, you hate them. Now your slow cortex gets around reminding you that you're spiritual. What does that do? That creates guilt. Guilt. So you haven't really, pushing people into spiritual work then means you're going to subject them to a lot of guilt because they're never going to be able to live up to the expectation. Why? Because the expectation doesn't have a chance until this has come up already. Now, this whole phenomena is then stored in your hippocampus. I love that word, hippocampus. Right south of Columbus, isn't it? That's the campus where the hippos all go. The hippocampus. On the hippocampus, then. What is the hippocampus storing? It's storing this phenomena here. So the memory of it now reawakens the emotion. I should have an arrow going from here to here. The memory now of it reawakens that you hate that guy. You hate him because your memory of him is this. That's what gets programmed into your hippocampus, is that you hate him. Hatred goes on generation after generation, century after century, about the same issue. Stuck in people's hippocampus. Stuck in your hippocampus. That's why the direct pathway of self-realization bypasses all of that, because you're not referencing that which happened centuries ago. You're not stuck in history, ethnicism, the geography, and the politics of the times, which gets incorporated in ecclesiastic literature as scripture. There's nothing scriptural about it. Who walked down the sidewalk and did what 2,000 years ago, some other part of the planet, is irrelevant. Relevant to what? Irrelevant to your enlightenment. It would just be excess baggage because all that elicits emotion elicits emotion. And the hatred of one religion for another, which is ripping the world apart right now, is based on this here, coming out of this here, out of the historic, out of the history of the various religions, out of the hippocampus comes the hatred of one religion for another. Left brain animal, they are the enemy, kill them. Kill them for God. I mean, anybody who's even up to 200, kill them for God, to say, huh? Kill them for God, yeah, right. All right, what happens then above 200? Above 200, we see now, first of all, for the first time, an etheric brain, not just a physical brain. The input is very instantly to the etheric brain. Why? Because the etheric brain is connected to the field. The physical brain is connected to the input, the senses. The etheric brain is already connecting with the field, and as you get more spiritually evolved, you become the field rather than the content of the field. So the etheric brain is now beginning to reflect the field. Therefore, the input is fast to the etheric brain and to the amygdala, and the hippocampus stores it as a beautiful deer that you loved instead of getting a gun and killing it. Huh? The downside of this, is we warned before, is you love the tiger loves you, and in the 500 you forget that but it's still a tiger. And a tiger who's integrous will be integrous to his tiger nature. And his tiger nature is to eat you because he loves you. A tiger will eat you not because he hates you, but because when you get his nervous system overexcited, he will eat you because he loves you. Let's see. The lion ate the lady with the lion out of love, resist. We have permission to ask God what I'm thinking about. What's his name? Manticore loved him so much, he ate him. Yep. What's the name of the tiger, the white tiger? Manticore.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, Manticore ate him. It's hard to eat him out of love. Excess love overactivates their nervous system and they can't handle it. What do you say about children? They're so adorable I could just eat them up. In the end, the animal gets overwhelmed by this energy and doesn't know what to do, and it just has to eat up that which it loves, see? The ego would see it as hatred. No, Manticore didn't hate him at all. Manticore loved him. Oh, God. I love you so much I could eat you up, sweetheart. All right, so the advantage then, we have to realize then the advantage of spiritual commitment. It activates the right brain. It causes a change in physiology. It allows for immediate knowingness. That's what's speaking to you today. I have permission to ask that. That's what's speaking to them today. From the field. Got it. So that which is called the Atman is the divinity of the field. That which is called in Sanskrit well, we won't talk about it in Sanskrit. I'm not too left-brained today. Anyway, the field is generally then, the etheric brain is very sensitive to the field because it is really a variation of the field. So the etheric brain is capable of nonverbal, nonlinear knowingness. The speakingness happening of its own, right this moment, is coming from the field through etheric brain. That's a fact. Okay. I never did know how it worked, but subjectively, experientially, it didn't matter. All right, so you develop an etheric brain. The etheric brain is a modification of the total energy field of divinity, which becomes modified more progressively towards form, but it is quite a bit beyond form. So the field knows, and we see from kinesiologic testing that consciousness knows everything. The omniscience of God, omniscience, is the all-knowingness expressed as the infinite field of consciousness beyond all time, beyond all content, beyond all form, which only knows if a thing is and if a thing is true. That's all it knows. Because knowingness has non-existence, there's no way consciousness can know non-existence. Consciousness is unable to recognize falsity because falsity has no reality to consciousness. Yeah? Therefore, the kinesiologic response is only yes or a not yes. Understanding comes through, not through intellection then, as you get more right brain and more spiritual. Understanding comes about as a self-realization. It reveals itself. The idea that etheric brain is connected to the field, and that's how the knowingness speaks through, is speaking right now. The thought didn't arise until I spoke it. I never thought of it before. It gives a sort of a physiologic explanation. What is the name for the teacher within? The Purusha. Ah, yes, the Purusha. So, the etheric brain's capacity to pick up the knowingness of divinity, omnipotence, is called classically the Purusha of the spiritual teacher. There is no personal self speaking to you. There is no personal self speaking to you at all. That's a rejection. No such thing exists. The field, through the capacity of the etheric brain, can tell the cerebral cortex how to speak it and verbalize it. You get it the same time I get it. I didn't hear it till I just heard it when you got it, you know what I mean? Which makes life an exciting adventure, because you live on the edge of the unknown all the time. And nobody knows what's going to come up next. What's the consequence for us all as humans? Below 200, then, you have left brain dominance. In left-handed people, of course, is the other side. But in common parlance, so-called left brain dominance, which is linear. It's like the difference between, this is like the digital computer and this is an analog computer. The digital computer, left brain, it's linear. It is associated with the emotional base, and it releases Hans Selye's stress reaction. Selye described the three phases. He was a physiologist. The first reaction in the emotion is one of alarm. Adrenaline shoots out. We're set for fight or flight, which was described by Walter Cannon, another physiologist. The fight or flight. The alarm reaction, then, once it's over, you can't stay terrified with the hair standing up on the back of your head forever. You go into a chronic state of resistance. This is where all the illnesses and the aches and pains begin, because part of spiritual work, in fact a considerable part, is overcoming resistance. The alarm reaction is one of panic, one of hatred, one of anger. Then the stage of resistance. That's a rock right now. You see the resistance of the people, the resistance of the Americans, the resistance of the populace to change, etc. Resistance eventually leads to exhaustion of the glands above the adrenals. Leads to adrenal exhaustion, and eventually to apathy and death. Adrenal exhaustion uncorrected. Another aspect that it does is that it stresses the thymus. You remember with Dr. Diamond's thymic thump? We went ha 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 to stimulate the thymus, because stress then causes suppression of the thymus, which is the center of balance of the acupuncture system. Out of thymic balance, then, the acupuncture system regulates the flow of energy to the body's organs. The healthy thymus stimulates the production of killer cells. Killer cells are good because they are killers of bad things like bacteria. So these are good killer cells. And therefore, stress then means you blow your acupuncture meridian, disease, and you lose your immunity and the inability to withstand various diseases, cancer, and all the rest. Because of blowing the acupuncture meridian, disease process. Also, you get a negative kinesiologic response. The effect on the brain directly is the neurotransmitters like serotonin and norepinephrine are stressed out. So Prozac, its main function is to increase serotonin in the brain. So the stress centers in the brain finally reach what Selye calls exhaustion, and you lose the norepinephrine and serotonin neurotransmitters in the brain. Prozac and drugs that restore it are life-saving. In the old days, people just, turned to drugs or drink or suicide. Now they take a Prozac. So it's better to be ridiculed for taking Prozac and live to breathe than to die of suicide or apathy. So-called accidents, where you don't care enough to get out of the way of the oncoming car, you say the hell with it. So it's listed as an accident, but it's actually a suicide. And we already mentioned, the track to the emotions is twice as fast as it's twice as fast. With spiritual evolution, then, we see the beginning of right brain dominance. You see, the mind becomes more and more the field. It tends to think more in generalities, more as it all works out in the end. Why worry about it? Why fuss about everything? It's going to work out. It all works out for the best. Why? Because the infinite context of the field is divinity. So the right brain tends to be non-linear. It tends to get the gist of things. What is the essence that you're trying to say? Somebody will give you a long-winded story. After about the fifth paragraph, you say, what's the point? They want to track you through their left brain, you see? As you get right brain, you're not interested in people's left brain anymore. And you find yourself giving up reading books. It's very rare that you read a book. Why? Because the purpose is to get the gist of it. And when you get the gist of it by one way or the other, then you move from there by virtue of the field. There's a certain familiarity and knowingness and the ability to tell truth from falsehood. The physiologic effect then is the peacefulness then releases endorphins. Endorphins are what give you a positive feeling. It's the reason drugs that get you high are so popular, because it artificially recreates, mimics, or releases endorphins artificially. The difficulty with it is after the drug wears off, then you crash down to less than you were before, which increases the necessity to repeat the drug. So the addiction is not really to the drug. The addiction is to the effect of the drug, which is to induce euphoria by the release of endorphins. So you're not addicted to the drug. Frankly, you'll take anything that'll get you high. A sophisticated addict knows, I don't care what it is. If it gets you high, I'll have some. What's in the bottle? Who cares? Does it get you there? Okay. Get you where? It gets you to positive emotions and mimics the effect of the endorphins. True spiritual commitment, then, supports the thymus gland, increases the body's production of killer cells, wherefore greater immunity, greater resistance to cancer, faster healings, spontaneous healings. It balances the acupuncture system and gives you a positive kinesiologic response. And we see the real critical factor physiologically is that the track to the emotions is much faster through the etheric cortex, faster than the other side. In summary, then, we can say, spiritual endeavor and commitment literally changes the brain, its function, its physiology. It creates an etheric brain. The etheric is much closer to the infinite spiritual. The etheric brain, and it creates in the prefrontal cortex of the right brain, an area specific for spiritual knowledge and learning. Yeah? Let's verify that. That's a fact, resist. It's a literal fact. Physiologically, it creates now a place in the prefrontal cortex for the storing and working together of spiritual awareness and knowledge. So everything that you read that's spiritually correct, everything that makes you go strong with kinesiology, now contributes to the knowingness of this etheric brain. The right prefrontal cortex of the etheric brain is as close as we need to specify. That's as close as we need to specify. That's good enough. Good enough. I don't want to get so left brain I got to explain it all over again. This is as left brain as I could get this week, folks. And that left me with a headache. Should I have them coming down this way and put these on the side, or should I have them coming this way? You know, I mean, big decisions like that. Oh, yeah. Let's put it out. Let's put it out. Yeah. All right, so we'll put the brain back up there just so we know what we're talking about, because I tend to forget what we're talking about. Oh, yes, we're talking about the brain and the physiologic differences. Now, is that phenomenal or what? Actual physical, physiologic, and functional change that spiritual commitment brings about. Measurable, identifiable. The fastest way to know it is to test kinesiology. You see it instantly makes you go strong. The change in the whole body's physiology, its whole energy system, and the way in which it perceives and processes data. Therefore, you might say, spiritual commitment brings forth that which, if it happened suddenly, would be called miraculous. In the Course in Miracles, one asks the Holy Spirit, you see, for a miracle. What you're really asking is for is a recontextualization, to replace perception with vision, to replace left brain linearity with right brain understanding, which is more holistic. Holistic. It seems like a rather amazing discovery. When we realize that people below 200 can't help being the way they are. They cannot help being the way they are, because that's the way their brain actually processes information. That helps us with forgiveness. It helps us with self-forgiveness, because you will catch a track, a sensory track, especially if it's karmically loaded, triggering a negative feeling, a negative perception. And then the next thing that comes up with you is guilt. Now, why did I do that? You hit your thumb with a hammer, and you swear, and then you say, "Oh, why did I say that?" You know, you've sworn off swearing, and there you are swearing after having sworn off swearing. The old paradigm would be guilt and penance. Guilt and penance. On your knees from here to New York City, which I think anchors it. Why does it anchor it? Because it doesn't change your brain physiology. You're going to do the same thing the next time you hit your thumb. Because it hasn't changed your brain physiology. We see, let's do the number one thing, the levels of consciousness. You can see that guilt and remorse and penance and all that, this doesn't have the capacity to change your brain physiology in a spiritual direction. Wallowing in guilt and penance and self-flagellation and self-hatred anchors you at the bottom. So now you're still at the mercy of your unmodified left brain. No, the way to God is through joy. Yeah? Devotional non-duality means a commitment to the truth above all else. You're more committed to truth than you are to being a martyr. You're more committed to truth than being right. The way to God is through the joy of one's existence. Joy in the awareness of the source of one's own existence. The way to God is through love, through joy, through forgiveness, through being benign, merciful, considerate, polite, calling the waitress sweetie pie.